You've been carrying something, not just today, for a while now. And the strange part is, you've gotten so used to it that you almost don't feel it anymore. Feel your shoulders right now. Are they up near your ears? Is there a tightness just beneath your chest? That low, quiet pressure that never quite lets go. That's not stress from today. That's accumulated weight. Thought by thought, day by day, silently stacked until it became the background noise of your life. You wake up, and before your feet touch the floor, the mind is already running. The list, the worry, yesterday replaying without permission, something beneath it all, quietly dreading what comes next. And somewhere between the first breath and the first cup of coffee, the morning is already gone, handed over to a mind that feeds itself on whatever you left lying around. The Buddha said, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. Not what you do, not what you achieve, not what you say you believe. What you think, quietly, repeatedly, habitually, is what you become. And most of us have never stopped to ask, what is this mind actually feeding on? What thoughts am I repeating without even knowing I'm repeating them? What seeds am I planting every single morning before the day has even begun? Because the mind doesn't wait for you to choose. It feeds itself on whatever is available, on whatever you leave lying around. Leave fear, and it grows fear. Leave resentment, and it builds on that too. Leave the same anxious story running on repeat, and that story slowly becomes the texture of your entire inner world. And the inner world, over time, becomes the outer one. This video isn't about motivation. It's not about pushing harder or forcing yourself to think positively. It's about something quieter and far more powerful. Learning to tend the garden of your own mind before the world plants something there first. Because the world is already trying. Every notification, every comparison, every headline is designed to make you feel like you are not enough. The world plants seeds constantly. The question is whether you are tending your own garden first. Lesson 1. The body is telling you the truth. Before we go anywhere else, I want you to take one breath, not a deep, dramatic breath, not the kind you take at the start of a yoga class, just one ordinary breath, in and out. Notice what happens when you do that. Maybe the shoulders drop just slightly. Maybe something in the chest softens, even by a fraction. Maybe the jaw, which has been quietly clenched for hours, loosens just enough to remind you it was tight. In Buddhist practice, the breath is not simply a biological function. It is an anchor, the one thread that is always available, always present, always connecting you back to this exact moment. The Buddha taught that the body and the mind are not separate, that what lives in the body lives in the mind, that what the mind holds, the body carries. And so if your shoulders are up by your ears, your mind has been working overtime. If your chest feels heavy and compressed, something in you has been bracing for impact. If you woke up this morning already tired, the mind has been running through the night, processing, worrying, replaying, doing its anxious work in the dark. The body doesn't exaggerate. It doesn't dramatize. It is the honest record of everything the mind has been carrying. And here is the beautiful part. If the body holds the tension, the body can also release it. You don't have to trace every worry back to its source. You don't have to understand every thought before you can find peace. You just have to start with the breath and let the body remember, slowly, gently, that it is allowed to soften. That permission is available to you right now. Not when life cooperates, not when the problem gets solved. Right now, in this moment, your body is allowed to put something down. Let it. Lesson 2. This moment is the only place reality exists. The mind is a remarkable traveler. It can be in last Tuesday's argument, before you finished your morning tea. It can be 3 weeks ahead, rehearsing a conversation that hasn't happened yet. It can be somewhere you've been trying to leave for months, replaying, rehearsing, bracing, all without moving a single step. And while the mind travels, the moment you are actually in passes by unnoticed. The warmth of the morning light, the taste of something simple and good, the quiet that exists right now before the day makes its demands. There is a story of a monk who came to his teacher in deep distress. He said, "Master, I cannot stop thinking about what I did last year, and I cannot stop dreading what might go wrong tomorrow. I feel like I am living everywhere except where I actually am." The teacher handed him a cup of tea. He said simply, "Drink this." The monk held the cup. He felt the warmth spreading through his palms. He smelled the steam rising and curling in the cool air. He took a slow sip, and for a moment, just a moment, there was no last year. There was no tomorrow. There was only the warmth of the ceramic, the smell of the tea, and the quiet of the room around him. "Where were you just now?" the teacher asked. "Here," the monk said, softly. "Yes," the teacher said. "That is the only place you have ever been, and it is the only place where reality lives." This is what mindfulness actually means. Not sitting perfectly still with an empty mind. Not achieving some state of permanent peace. It means returning again and again to what is actually happening right now. To the weight of your hands. To the sound of your own breathing. To the texture of this moment, exactly as it is. Because here is the truth that many of us know but keep forgetting. Peace is not waiting somewhere ahead. It's not on the other side of the problem being solved. It's not something you earn when life finally cooperates. Peace is available here, in this breath, in this moment, in the returning, and every time you come back, even for just a few seconds. You are carving a new groove in the mind, one that says, presence is possible. Stillness is available. Now is enough. Lesson 3. Stress is not the enemy. Avoidance is. Let's be honest about something that most wellness content doesn't want to say out loud. Stress is not going away. Hard days are not going away. Moments where the mind goes dark and heavy and loud. These are not signs that something has gone wrong with you. They are signs that you are human and that you are alive to something real. The problem isn't that stress exists. The problem is what most of us do when it arrives. We push it down. We cover it with distraction, with screens, with busyness, with the noise of other people's urgency. We tell ourselves we'll deal with it later, and later never comes, so we carry it forward instead. Into the next hour, into the next conversation, into the next week, and the mind learns from what it carries. Not consciously, not deliberately, but the way a river learns the shape of its banks, flowing through them again and again, until the channel is worn deep. In Buddhist teaching, there is a concept called samskara, the impressions, the groove, the tracks, that repeated thoughts and experiences carve into the mind over time. Think of it this way. When a thought moves through the mind once, it leaves a slight trace. When it moves through again, the trace deepens. When it runs through dozens of times a day, for weeks on end, it becomes a channel. And the mind, by default, follows channels. This is why certain worries feel automatic. This is why some thought patterns feel like they have a life of their own. Because in a very real sense, they do. They've been practiced, repeated until they became familiar. And the mind is drawn to what is familiar. But here is what samskara also teaches. Channels can be redirected. Not instantly, not by force, but gradually, patiently, with the kind of quiet persistence that water uses to reshape stone. The practice isn't to stop the stress. It is to notice it clearly, calmly, without adding a story, and to find in that noticing the space between the thought and the response. That space is small at first, barely a breath wide, but it is there. And in that space, that tiny gap between what happens and how you react, lives every possibility of change, every chance to respond differently, every beginning of a new channel. The Buddha called this awareness. And awareness, he taught, is the beginning of freedom. Not the end of difficulty, but the beginning of freedom from being run by it. Every time you notice the thought before it becomes the reaction, every time you feel the weight without immediately becoming it, you are building something real, a capacity for resilience that grows quietly until difficulty no longer has to run the show. Lesson 4, what you feed is what grows. There is a teaching at the heart of every self-help tradition. One that sounds simple and cuts very deep. The Buddha said, what we think, we become. What we feel, we attract. What we imagine, we create. 3 lines, and they're not about positive thinking. They're about something far more fundamental. The mind is a garden, and whether you tend it or not, things grow. Every thought you repeat becomes a seed. Every story you tell yourself about who you are, what you're capable of, what you deserve, gets planted in the soil of the subconscious mind. And the mind doesn't sort between seeds that serve you and seeds that slowly wear you down. It grows what it's given, without judgment, without preference, without any interest in whether the harvest helps you or hurts you. So the honest question, the one that's worth sitting with, is this: what are you actually giving it? When you scroll through content that makes you feel like you're not enough, you are planting something. When you replay a conversation in the dark before sleep, sharpening the wound instead of letting it close, you are planting something. When you run the worst case scenario before anything has even happened, you are planting something. And gardens grow. That is what gardens do. But here is the other side of this teaching, and it matters just as much. When you choose to sit with your breath for 5 minutes instead of your phone, you are planting something different. When you notice the morning light and let it actually land on you instead of immediately reaching for the next thing, you are planting something different. When you catch a thought that is unkind to yourself and you don't amplify it, don't feed it, but simply let it pass, you are planting something different. Resilience, clarity, presence, compassion. These are not personality traits you either have or you don't. They are plants, and they grow the same way the difficult ones do. Through repetition, through daily, quiet, unglamorous tending. You don't have to transform the garden overnight. You just have to be willing to ask each morning with honesty, what am I planting today? What is getting my attention, my energy, my repetition? That question, asked sincerely and consistently, will do more than any motivational speech ever could. Lesson 5. Compassion is the condition, not the reward. There is a lie that many of us carry so quietly and so constantly that we've stopped noticing it's a lie. It sounds like this: I'll be easier on myself once I get it together. I'll stop being so hard on myself once I stop making these mistakes. I deserve patience once I actually deserve it. We treat self-compassion as something to be earned, a reward waiting at the end of a long journey of self-improvement, available only after we've fixed what's broken. But the Buddha understood something that centuries of human experience have confirmed. Compassion is not a reward for having it together. Compassion is the condition under which healing becomes possible. In Buddhist practice, this is called metta, loving kindness. And the practice of metta always begins with yourself. Not because your feelings matter more than anyone else's, not because self-care is the whole of the path, but because a mind at war with itself cannot access its own wisdom. A mind flooded with self-criticism can't think clearly, can't find stillness, can't reach the kind of growth it's actually capable of. Think about how you speak to yourself in the moments when you fall short. Most of us speak to ourselves in those moments, in ways we would never speak to someone we love. The voice is immediate, harsh, relentless, and then it criticizes itself for being so harsh, and then criticizes itself for that. This is not discipline. This is noise, and noise drowns out the signal every time. What if, just once, today, when you fell short of what you hoped, you responded to yourself the way you'd respond to a dear friend who was struggling, not with lowered standards, not with empty reassurance, but with warmth, with patience, with the quiet acknowledgement that growth is not linear and that stumbling is not the opposite of progress. It is part of it. The mind you tend with compassion becomes the mind that can actually change. The mind you tend with cruelty just learns to hide. Healing happens in warmth, not in harshness. That is not softness. That is wisdom. Lesson 6. The inner world shapes what you see. Here is a teaching that many people resist at first because it can sound like blame, like your life is hard because you created it that way. But that is not what this means. That is not what the Buddha was pointing at, what he taught, and what contemplative traditions across centuries have confirmed is something more subtle and more empowering than blame. The quality of your inner world shapes how you perceive, interpret, and respond to everything outside it. Two people can face the exact same situation, the same difficult conversation, the same unexpected setback, the same ordinary Wednesday that isn't going the way anyone planned, and experience it entirely differently. Not because one is stronger or luckier, but because the lens through which they're seeing it has been shaped by different thoughts, worn smooth by different habits, formed by what each of them has been feeding their mind A mind trained in gratitude, practiced in noticing what's still good, finds evidence of goodness even in difficulty. A mind trained in resentment, always scanning for what's wrong, finds evidence of wrongness even in abundance. A mind trained in presence meets the moment as it is. A mind trained in dread meets every moment as a threat. None of this is your fault. The training happened largely without your knowledge, through experience, through environment, through years of repetition. But here is what matters most. All of it is within your reach. Because if the lens was shaped by what you practiced, it can be reshaped by what you practice differently. Not all at once, not through sheer willpower, but through the slow, patient, daily act of choosing what you feed the mind. One morning of stillness instead of noise. One breath taken before a habitual reaction. One moment of awareness chosen over the spiral. These are not small things. These are the building materials of a different inner world. And a different inner world creates a different outer life. Not by magic, but by changing what you see. And what you see changes what you do. And what you do, over time, changes everything. This is what Buddhism promises. Not that life becomes easy, but that you will no longer be helpless inside it. That awareness becomes the anchor that holds you steady, even when everything outside is moving. Lesson 7. Morning is not lost. It's waiting. There is still time. I know that might feel like a small thing to say, but I mean it completely. Right now, in this moment, this morning, this quiet window, before the day has made its demands, before the inbox fills, before other people's urgency becomes yours. There is still a window, and in that window, you get to choose what you feed your mind first. Not perfectly, not with some elaborate ritual, just once. Just this one first choice. The Buddha taught what he called the Noble Eightfold Path, a way of living that, at its heart, is not about achieving perfection. It is about direction. It doesn't ask, have you already arrived? It asks, where are you pointing? And right now, in this breath, you get to point towards something worth growing toward stillness before noise, toward awareness before reaction, toward compassion before criticism, toward presence in this ordinary, imperfect, completely available moment. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need a perfect routine. You don't need to have been consistent since January. You just need this, a willingness to tend the garden, even when it's overgrown, even when you've neglected it for weeks, even when you can't see anything growing yet. Something always grows. That is what living things do. The mind is the most alive thing you have. It is already growing something. The only question, the only one that really matters, is what you are choosing to plant. And right now, this morning, that choice is still yours. Let's bring it home together. We began this morning in the body, with tension, with weight, with the quiet truth that the mind had already been running before we had a chance to choose. In lesson 1, we felt the breath as an anchor, because the body holds what the mind carries, and one breath is always enough to begin. In lesson 2, we came back to this moment, because peace isn't waiting somewhere ahead. It lives here, in the presence we choose. In lesson 3, we looked honestly at stress, and found the breath width of space between thought and reaction, where freedom quietly lives. In Lesson 4, we asked what we are planting, because the mind grows what it's given, and we are the gardeners, whether we tend the garden or not. In Lesson 5, we practiced metta, loving kindness beginning with ourselves, because compassion is the ground on which real growth becomes possible. In Lesson 6, we understood that the inner world shapes what we see, and that what we tend inside us over time transforms the life we experience outside. And in Lesson 7, we remembered the morning is not lost. The window is still open. The direction we choose right now matters more than everything we did not choose before. You are not behind. You have not missed your chance. There is no version of this path that requires you to have already arrived. Every single morning is a beginning. Every breath is an invitation to return. Every choice to feed the mind something worth growing is an act of quiet, profound self-respect, unglamorous and deeply powerful. The Buddhist teachings were never about escaping life. They were always about returning to it with awareness, with compassion, with the kind of presence that makes even an ordinary morning feel like something worth being here for. And at the heart of every one of these teachings is a single, quiet invitation. Let go. Not of your responsibilities, not of the people you love, not of the goals that matter to you, but of the thoughts you've been carrying that were never yours to keep. The worry that has already done everything it can do. The self-criticism that has never once made you better. The version of yesterday that keeps looping in a story that serves no one. You are allowed to put those down right now. Not because you've earned the rest, but because carrying them has never helped you grow. The garden doesn't need more weight. It needs more light. And that light begins the moment you choose to stop feeding what diminishes you and start tending what is worth growing. You are here. The garden is yours. Let go of what you've been carrying and plant something worth growing today. If these teachings resonated with you, share this with someone who might need it, and subscribe for more wisdom like this. Every morning is a new beginning. It starts with what you choose to let go of and what you choose to grow.